What do all rapidly scaling organizations have in common? A clearly defined and deliberately attended to culture. Join me for this insight talk on how you can build and scale your organization by deliberately defining your culture.
Thank you very much for joining. My name is Matt Scott. I'm the CEO and co-founder of CauseMic, and we help nonprofits develop high-performance teams that leverage technology, storytelling, and design to raise money for the causes that each and every one of you is out there working for. I'm excited to share with you today what I believe to be what all high-growth nonprofits have in common, which is a very clearly defined and deliberately attended to culture. I'm going to use the example of Team Rubicon, where prior to CauseMic, I was head of development operations. During that time, we scaled from $250,000 in revenue to $40 million in revenue in just 7 years. So that story really starts back in 2010, following the earthquake in Haiti. It was then when a small group of military veterans and medical professionals, led by Marine veterans Jake Wood and William McNulty, headed into Port-au-Prince to help those in need. As they crossed over the river into Port-au-Prince, they discovered that there were tremendous similarities between disaster zones and combat war zones. And by repurposing the skills and experience that they cultivated on the battlefield, they could not only help those affected by disaster, but they could also renew their sense of purpose, community, and self-identity that had been lost when they took off the uniform. Over the several years to follow, hundreds of military veterans traded in their uniforms for a Team Rubicon gray shirt. And those gray shirts in 2012 ascended onto the Rockaways following Hurricane Sandy, where they mobilized thousands of spontaneous volunteers, organizing them into small units that are called strike teams. Those teams went street by street, removing debris and mucking homes. A year later, when a tornado hit Moore, Oklahoma, their team applied not just their muscle and their grit, but also their brains. A team of people who had mapped out complex terrains in Iraq and Afghanistan, defined an area of operation where they could effectively keep track of those who had been served and those who were still in need of service. That same year, when Typhoon Haiyan hit the Philippines, Team Rubicon deployed a disaster medical assistance team where they provided resources and medical care to remote populations that were in desperate need of help. Then, fast forward to 2017, with Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria, Team Rubicon now not only responds to disasters, but they help communities prepare for, respond to, and rebuild after disaster. You can still find Team Rubicon gray shirts in Houston, Texas, and in Puerto Rico, rebuilding homes for those who lost absolutely everything. So by a show of hands, how many people here had heard of Team Rubicon before today? Wow, 7 years ago, I would have been really happy to see that number. Before T-Mobile brought Team Rubicon to the World Series, before you could find a Team Rubicon logo wrapped around a Mountain Dew can or racing around a NASCAR track, before Presidents Clinton, Bush, and Obama all pledged their support for Team Rubicon, there was a group of individual donors that started as a very small few, that grew into hundreds and then thousands and then hundreds of thousands. Individual donors, corporate partners, and foundations that invested in Team Rubicon, invested in what it was that they were doing. Perhaps more impressive is the volunteer force. What started again as just 7 became 100, 1,000, and now exceeds 100,000 registered volunteers. And all of that money and all of that manpower, what does it mean? It means that Team Rubicon has been able to deploy on more disasters each year with a higher level of complexity. Ultimately, they are empowered to help people on their absolute worst day. That's worth a pause. I don't know. I was really happy to be a part of that. So what is the secret weapon behind how they did that? They started by defining the impossible end state. The impossible end state for them was to be the best disaster relief organization in the world, period. That is a pretty audacious goal, and to do that, you have to have the right people. At Team Rubicon, we describe these as the people who are foolish enough to think that they could change the world, but smart enough to have a chance. And unfortunately, I got through for them. But still, an incredible group of people that came together. You know, Jake Wood, our CEO, would oftentimes remind us that there was a military principle at play. For every 100 who go into battle, 10 are leaders. But only one makes sure that everybody gets home. If you're going to build the best disaster relief organization in the world, you have to be an organization of ones. You have to attract and retain the very best talent in the world. There's no other option. Well, to do that, with that North Star defined, we set out to define what are the cultural principles at Team Rubicon that will be the absolute guiding force, the filter for everything that we do. So that we're looking to hire somebody, we run them through this culture test, right? My personal favorite on this is your mother is a donor. Relatively simple concept. Every single dollar that comes into Team Rubicon, imagine that it was donated by my mother. How would I respect that donation? How would I invest that dollar? How would I invest that dollar with my North Star to build the best disaster relief organization in the world? You can't forget the people, right? The people are probably the most important part of this operation. We consistently said that passion trumps talent, but culture is king. When we look at those cultural principles, do you line up to each and every one of those? Do you line up to each and every one of those? The ultimate test was, would we have gone to Haiti with you? That was the ultimate determining factor. With a really clearly defined North Star, with a really clearly defined list of cultural principles, what you ultimately have is another military principle, which is commander's intent. The idea here is that a commander need not tell her forces how to go about taking a hill. She only has to say, we are going to take that hill. And then you get out of people's way. You give them permission to act. We had a mandate, not permission, but a mandate to make bold decisions. Again, we were trying to build the best disaster relief organization in the world. So we had to make bold decisions. And this is my personal story of bold decisions. In 2012, when Hurricane Sandy hit, this is me at my dinner table at about 2:30 a.m., handwriting thank you cards to every single donor who gave to Team Rubicon. It was the first time we had had thousands of people show their support philanthropically. I had just finished calling all of them and was now handwriting them. And I remember having a conversation with Jake just a couple of days later, our CEO, and I was like, man, you know, we have built an incredible loyalty, especially imagine getting a phone call, $5, $10 donation, we're thanking you, you're gonna get a handwritten thank you card. We built loyalty, but we had to figure out how to do that at scale. So I guess the interesting part I only learned later that was interesting was, you know, what organization allows a volunteer to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in identifying the right technology platform that would allow people to scale, the organization to scale personalized engagement, to reach each and every constituent on their preferred platform with their preferred message at their preferred time. It's not normal, but we weren't building a normal organization. We were building the best disaster relief organization in the world. We were empowered to make bold decisions. We were treated with this mandate, go out there and treat every single dollar as if your mother donated it. So that made the investment decision really, really simple. And so while I was out there looking for the right technology stack to make that happen, I was intrigued by this idea that, whoa, not every organization is ran like Team Rubicon. That's interesting. And then that was the birth, really, of CauseMic, which is the organization where we get together and we help nonprofits leverage technology, storytelling, and design so that they, too, can achieve their North Star, that they can reach and achieve their mission. Whether that's, you know, making sure that every single child has their own individual growth plan in the classroom, or making sure that all animals rescued are not killed but rather adopted, or solving some of the world's most complex problems in the most difficult regions through innovation. At the end of the day, CauseMic exists so that nonprofits are fully funded so that they can go out and solve the most complex problems in the world. We want to fund every single nonprofit organization so you can go out and do and achieve your North Star. Simply put, we empower nonprofits to do the most good. Leaning in from that experience at Team Rubicon, I recognize to achieve that North Star, to fully fund every nonprofit, we're going to have the very best people. How do we attract the very best people, the builders and the doers, not the maintainers? First, you look to your left and your right and you ask how many of them will come with you. And then after that, you define that why, right? That why and that culture. The why, we empower nonprofits to do the most good. We want to fully fund them. The cultural principles. These will be our guiding force at CauseMic to reach our North Star, right? These are going to be the things that we hire people off of. But it's also what stands behind each and every recommendation that we make to our clients. And our clients are really grouped into two categories. We have the established nonprofits. These are the organizations that are around for decades. We think of these as high-touch philanthropy. Their donors, individual donors, primarily have been acquired through direct mail. They've got special events. They've got a dependency upon a well-oiled major gifts program. Ultimately, they have an aging donor base. These organizations are trying to unlock the next generation of supporters, right? They're looking for those technology solutions to take advantage of their in-person events. They're looking to grow upon their brand recognition. Then you've got the other end of the spectrum. These are the emerging nonprofits. These are the nonprofits that were forced to innovate. They were forced to implement these technology solutions because there was no other choice. High-touch philanthropy didn't exist, right? That wasn't an option. But these organizations lack the systems, process, and methodology to scale. Usually, they are focused outwardly, programs, donors, but they need to take a step back and look at their own organization and figure out what systems, process, and methods are necessary to implement so that they too can reach the next level. So with our cultural principles in mind, we set forth to help these organizations reach their North Star. So this is my absolute favorite one of ours, which is sleeves up. And I realized that I had rolled my sleeves up just coming up into this, which was an accident. But the idea here is that, it's about getting shit done, right? And this is what I really like about this. I had the opportunity to work for a nonprofit that scaled from 8 million to 110 million, another high growth nonprofit. In the decade or so that the CEO worked there, he had this idea that leaders don't belong in offices, they belong next to their teams. They belong next to their teams because that's when they hear the big ideas, that's when they hear the challenges, that's when they know what goes into each and every day. And it's not the only way to lead, but I was very impressed with his results. There's no question that his way of leading helped scale that organization. Emerging nonprofits have the opposite problem, right? They essentially, you've got an executive director who's also writing thank you cards to donors, probably running programs, just took out the trash, maybe made time to come here, is typing on the laptop, figuring out how to do it all. For those, I'm seeing some heads nod. For those organizations, it's more about learning how to say no. What do you say no to? You define what your goals are, and then you list out all of those ideas that you have, or your supporters have, or your staff have, if you're lucky enough to have one, and you prioritize the highest impact, lowest cost, be it time or money. And it seems like a really simple idea, but it is incredibly effective to learn how to say no to certain things. Winston Churchill once said, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal." And the really interesting thing here is thinking beyond incremental growth, right? So just a few weeks ago, we were in a room with one of our established nonprofit clients, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, right? Imagine $100 million in revenue, and you're thinking, how do I get to 104 million next year? How do I get to 105 million next year? It's that kind of thinking that keeps you constrained into your current environment. If at Team Rubicon we had thought at 8 million, how are we going to build the systems to make it to 15? We never would have made it to 40. We were building systems to be a billion-dollar organization. How do we be the best disaster relief organization in the world, right? You have to think bigger than your current state. At emerging nonprofits, we oftentimes see this rapid growth and then plateau. And that sometimes happens because you don't take a step back to evaluate the lessons learned, right? And really, you allow that success to get in the way of continuously evolving. So after every operation at Team Rubicon, we would do after-action reports. And we would evaluate what worked and what didn't work. How can we apply those lessons to the next thing? And you need to do that with curiosity in mind. Because you're not just thinking about how do I improve from the past based only on what I know, but the future belongs to the curious. These are the people who go out there and really are here in attendance at a conference like this looking for new solutions to complex global problems. Again, taking from an example, a couple of weeks ago, we had one of our established nonprofits said, we're really a leader at this organization. We're really, really excited to invest in these emerging technologies like text messaging, chatbots, AI. How many people have sent or received a text message today? Okay, this is not an emerging technology. This is here, right? 5 years ago, 7 years ago, that nonprofit had the resources to invest before the little guys could, right? But they weren't there, they weren't thinking, they weren't curious about what was next. You know, Jake could have, again, the CEO at Team Rubicon, could have at any point in time while I was at Team Rubicon said, hey man, it's really wonderful that you're out there in the world helping these other nonprofits, but why aren't you spending 100% of your time working to grow Team Rubicon? That was never in question, because my individual professional development plan, we had our North Star, we knew what hills we were taking, we knew the values that we had as an organization, the commitment that I had made to Team Rubicon as a staff member. My individual professional development plan was to go out there and test what we're doing with organizations at different stages. Take those learnings back to Team Rubicon. Take the learnings from Team Rubicon and apply them at other organizations. It was a hands-on type of learning experience that allowed me to remain intensely curious about what was happening in the world so that we could continuously innovate and lead. You know, talk is basically cheap, and oftentimes, you know, you sit around a table. This is like one of the blessings and the curses of a major, big, established nonprofit. You have access to an enormous amount of data, right? And it's easy to sit around a room or a table and wait for 95 to 100% certainty to act. Especially if you're trying to go from 100 million to 104 million, you got to be pretty sure, right, about what you're doing. Well, our idea is that it's a go, no-go decision is at 60%, right? Let's show us, don't tell us that this is going to be a good idea. Just get out there and execute, and you can always adjust fire from mid-plan. You know, at the emerging nonprofits, I think I've read a lot of business books, and the one that stands out to me is probably the most valuable business book that I've ever read is a book called Multipliers. Multipliers, simple theory, is basically a manager or a leader's job is to empower others to go out there to have a multiplying effect. Because if you're going to build the best disaster relief organization in the world, if you're going to fully fund every single nonprofit, you're not going to be able to do it alone. Your job is to be a force multiplier. So, you know, whatever it is that your North Star is, maybe it's taking over the 7 kingdoms, or hopefully it's something more altruistic than that. You know, at the end of the day, you have to go out there and you have to empower others to do it. At the end of the day, what we're talking about, I'm sure each and every one of you has an incredible mission, has an incredible cause that you are dedicating your life to. Some of those causes are things like making sure that people in Wimberley, Texas, whose homes are flooded, are mucked out, that they have what they need in a time of disaster. For some organizations, it's pairing marginalized women with orphan children in Ethiopia in order to create these family units. For others, it's about helping these cancer survivors who just went through treatment regain their sense of purpose and confidence that was lost during that through outdoor adventure. Whatever it is, you got to look to your left and your right. You got to absolutely respect the people that you're working with. It's even better if you love them deeply, but at the very least, you have to respect them, right? I'm seeing some love in the crowd from coworkers. So that's super, super important though, because at the end of the day, time flies when you're having fun. And if you're a builder and you're a doer and you're not a maintainer and you respect the people to your left and right, you are going to have a really good time solving the problems that you're out there doing. So basically, to wrap this up, how is it that Team Rubicon scaled from 250,000 to 7 million or 40 million in 7 years? At the end of the day, we defined our impossible end state: to be the best disaster relief organization in the world, to fully fund every single nonprofit organization so that you can go out there and solve the world's most complex problems. We were absolutely deliberate about defining our culture and using it as a guiding force for every single thing we did, from hiring to every decision we made. And at the end of the day, what that did is it empowered us to attract and get people inspired to take action. Thank you.